a number of churches I know in various areas have got together and are offering schools an input into assemblies and an input into our lessons. I mean, I know over the years I've done some of these things as well, very interesting, and once you start getting down talking with these kids on the nitty-gritty. But is this something that churches should actually be looking to do, and especially on the area that you've mentioned of where there are Christians that have been delivered out of knife crime or out of, quote, gangland or whatever? Is that something we should really be putting together, putting, quote, money into as churches, and offering it into schools as a very positive part of the curriculum of teaching the children and the young people of the dangers of these things?
Short answer is yes. And I think for those churches that already have good relationships with schools, go back to the school, to the governors, the head teacher, the leadership team, and say, here are some other things that we can offer. We're happy to bring the Christian faith alive and tell people about what we believe in the Bible and talk about what worship really looks like, but we can offer so much more, because life story is something that children never tire of. They want not just to study World War II, but to meet someone who's lived through it.
Right.
They don't just want to study about pregnancy and where babies come from and relationships. They want to meet someone who's had a baby, who's lived a life and made mistakes, and can come with first-hand advice and say, if I could do it all again, I would do it differently. And that's why I'm here today. We call it, as Christians, testimony.
That's right.
And the fact that we're a Christian, and we can be upfront and say, I go to this church and I read the Bible and I believe in God and Jesus, and I want to tell you about my life. I want to tell you about the mistakes I've made and how I changed, and the sorts of things that I would want to pass on to you, young people, as advice. I don't think schools would turn that away.
No.
And we don't need to say to young people after that story has been shared, so close your eyes and say this prayer of commitment with me now.
Right.
But all we can say is, I'm sure that if you've got any questions about Jesus or God or the Bible, you're welcome to come to our church, or if you ask your teacher, I'll come back and tell you more about it. And leave it open in the air, because then an invitation has been made to the school to follow it up. But churches are full of interesting people, and sometimes we send, dare I say, the least interesting. We send the pastor along, don't we?
I wonder what will happen when you're there on Sunday, what your pastor will think of you calling him the least interesting person.
But sometimes people think that Christians wear dog collars.
Yes.
That Christians lead worship in a church. And of course that's true, but that's only a tiny part of what the kingdom is about. The young people need to see that Christians are lawyers and police officers and firefighters and taxi drivers, and that every one of them can come in and talk about their job, and in doing so communicate their enthusiasm for two things: the job that they do and their commitment to providing the best service or product that they can. So key professionals wanting to be professionals, and their faith, their joy of living, and they're wanting to do it not just because of the money that they earn, but because they feel that their gifts and their talents are being used to make people happy and to make God happy.
Do you think with, especially with younger children, if they're going into primary school, do you think they need some lessons, some people, in how to communicate with younger people? I've heard some people that, great, well, mind you, they might even put a few adults to sleep. But when you start talking about relating to 7, 8, 9-year-olds, you're just not there at all. And of course, this is very much part of teacher training these days. Of course, you have that. Do you think if you're going to go into that primary school situation, that it is helpful somewhere along the line to get some training so you actually know, how do I communicate these things? What sort of visual aids should I use? I think it's vitally important, isn't it, that you just don't go in and talk without actually learning how to communicate to young people.
Yes, that's a good point, and probably the best thing to do is to go in and observe the way that the adults in that classroom relate to the children, because there's a world of difference. Even if you're a parent or a grandparent and you've got little children yourself, and you might relate well to them, world of difference between talking to 2 or 3 children who know you and rely upon you for their pocket money and their presents, and a class of 20 or 30.
Yes.
So see the way that people who do that day in, day out for a living do it, and then practice doing that. Do they use a book? And if they tell a story, which way does the book face, and where are the pictures, and how quickly do they turn the page, and does their finger follow it? Do they stand up and walk around? Do they sit in one place? What sort of words do they use and don't they use? And I would say, if you can be cool, if you are tuned into what young people are excited by, talk about it. But there's nothing as phony as a phony.
Yes.
And if you don't know anything about SpongeBob SquarePants, don't start talking about SpongeBob SquarePants. Yes. But if you do, and if you can answer the questions of the children, if you know all of the characters, if you can pick from a lineup who is Patrick Star and who is Sandy Cheeks, then go in and talk about SpongeBob SquarePants.
You obviously could. You could actually now give a 10-minute dissertation on SpongeBob and SquarePants.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes, I have actually heard of it.
Doug, I'm waiting for someone to contact me and invite me to write the Gospel according to SpongeBob SquarePants. There's a Gospel according to The Simpsons and a Gospel according to Peanuts.
Yes,
there's a lot that we can learn from SpongeBob.
Are you going to write the Gospel according to SpongeBob SquarePants? Well, that one.
If I ever get invited to do it,
right?
I must. Perhaps I should write to the creator and make the offer. Yeah, if that ever comes to light, I'll invite you to write the full.
My producer says she watches it all the time.
It's fantastic. But for viewers who think that we've lost the plot,
they're right. Can I move on to a number of other areas, and areas which are very close to my heart? And you mentioned, let's start with that whole thorny problem of Halloween earlier on, and the whole occult realm. And there are a whole number of things that are getting into schools. So you can have yoga, you can have Tai Chi, all these things are coming in, Halloween's coming in, various other occultic festivals that people want to do. How can you deal with that if you hear that your kids are being invited to do this, or or to be involved? What should Christian parents do? Apart from hitting the roof, which isn't the best way, what should they actually do in a situation like that?
Well, it's similar to the advice that I would give if parents feel that their child is being bullied. And number one is to listen, to hear the complaint, whatever the child or another teacher or parent has said, but check the sources. Sometimes we need to, what I call, audit the trail of gossip.
Yes.
Get it back, because sometimes it's, the head teacher said this in assembly. Well, who heard them say it? Or next term, class X will be teaching 6 lessons about witchcraft. Well, have you seen the teacher's plans? So we need to check the facts before we put anything in writing. Mm-hmm. And once we've checked that, and my advice, it's a good Christian principle, go to the person, speak to them face to face. So the person who's told us that there'll be something about witchcraft in school, then what we do is we check whether that's the case. Maybe we go to the class teacher and say, I wonder if you've decided what you'll be teaching about next term. Oh, that's interesting. I heard there might be something about witchcraft. If there is, then you put pen to paper and write to the teacher in the school. Right. But if not, then you keep your powder dry for the battles further down the road that will be worth fighting. Yeah. Sometimes we get excited about things that are only half true.